Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a small book haul. Let's just jump right into the books. So the first book I have here is Takhtumi, an anthology of Arctic horror stories. So this I am super excited about because I am interested in diverse voices in horror. So something that I did in the month of October that I researched and scripted but didn't actually pull together into a cohesive mini series was an exploration of horror. And so what I did was look at the genre, look at the canon, and then ultimately all that background research was to look at what is being done in horror, what is new, what is subversive, what are women writing. And so I have taken all of that and moved it into March 2020, where I can really do that project justice. But the result of me researching and reading all of this horror is that Google was sort of tracking my searches and recommending me things based on those searches, and this anthology of Arctic horror stories was one of those recommendations. It was something that would never have crossed my path without Google spying on me, so I mean, there's a pro, I suppose. So Takhtumi is an Inuktitut word that means in the dark, and these spine-tingling horror stories by northern writers show just how dangerous darkness can be. A family clinging to survival out on the tundra after a vicious zombie virus, a door that beckons waiting to unleash the terror behind it, a post-apocalyptic community in the far north where things aren't quite what they seem. One of the contributing authors in this is Richard Van Camp, who is an author that I wanted to spotlight as part of that March 2020 horror series. I love his works. He is a phenomenal author. You should check him out if you haven't already and look forward to that in 2020. The next book I have here is The Nakano Thrift Shop by Hiromi Kawakami and translated by Allison Markin Powell. So I picked this up after I finished Strange Weather in Tokyo by Kawakami. I really enjoyed the cozy, quiet, domestic vibes of Strange Weather in Tokyo. I am filming a review of both the subscription box service Osusumi, which contacted me and sent me Strange Weather in Tokyo for free. More on that if you want to hear about it shortly, but know that I liked the recommendation that they sent me enough to pick up this book by myself, spending my own dollars on it. This says, inside a jumble of bric-a-brac presided over by enigmatic ladies' man Mr. Nakano and frequented by a host of curious customers, all with their own dramas and tales of loss. It is here that Hitomi, a restless young woman, meets Takio, whose abrupt and taciturn manner she finds to her consternation increasingly disarming. Again, if it has this sort of similar, very character-heavy, quiet, domestic, mundane vibes, I'm here for it. The next thing is not really a book, but it's two poetry zines. I'm sure if you're on BookTube, you're familiar with Lena Norm's Just Kiss My Frog. She a while ago, posted that she was putting out a poetry zine called Doom Rolled in Glitter, and if you pre-ordered at that time, she would send you two, one for you and one for a friend. And so these are poems about being in your 20s, which I believe she's described as perfectly encapsulated by the title, Doom Rolled in Glitter. I don't know, I very much identify with the idea of Doom Rolled in Glitter for just encapsulating these years that I have been living through. And so I'm excited to read Lena's poetry, and I will let you know what I think. So in the month of November, my patrons voted on what would be my first Shirley Jackson novel. And so I owned two at the time, We Have Always Lived in the Castle and The Haunting of Hill House, and they voted and Hill House won. So I read and reviewed The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and I loved it. And I was curious about the horror there. We're going to get back to this in March 2020 with that little horror mini-series I plan on doing, because I am now interested in women's horror, and if women are preoccupied with different themes in their horror literature, is there something uniquely female about the horror in these texts. I mean, you can't just judge it off one book, right? So I've picked up some of her earlier works as well. So Hangs a Man is about 17-year-old Natalie Waite, who longs to escape home for college. Her father is a domineering and egotistical writer who keeps a tight rein over Natalie and her long-suffering mother. When Natalie finally does get away, however, college life doesn't bring the happiness she expected. She becomes infatuated with a married professor and feels lost and overwhelmed. Little by little, Natalie is no longer certain of anything, even where reality ends and her dark imaginings begin. This kind of sounds like it's going to fit in with that line of questioning for the Women in Horror series, but I'm excited to see. The other book by Jackson that I picked up was The Bird's Nest, which is about Elizabeth Richmond, a demure 23-year-old whiling her life away at a dull museum job, living with her neurotic aunt and subsisting off her dead mother's inheritance. When Elizabeth begins to suffer terrible migraines and backaches, Aunt Morgan takes her to see Dr. Wright, a psychologist with some unusual techniques. With Shirley Jackson's characteristic chill, we learn that Elizabeth is not just one girl, but 4 separate and compelling self-destructive personalities. The Bird's Nest, Jackson's third novel, develops hallmarks of the horror master's most unsettling works: a tormented heroine, a riveting familial mystery, and a disquieting view inside the human mind. So both of these are horror written by a woman writing in the 1940s to 1960s. And so they reflect women's life at this time. This is post-World War II life. So if we think about it historically, the men have gone off to war. Women enter the workforce, taking on a lot of these jobs because it was necessary for these jobs to continue. Then the men come back, and the women are expected to go back to being the domestic goddess in the home after having this taste of freedom. I think these are probably very specific to their time, but I'm curious if any of Jackson's explorations of horror continue into other horror by women, which is why I picked up Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. Who knows if that H is silent. So this is a collection of short stories. It was on a list of like top horror fiction by women. If I can find that list again, I will link it for you in the description box down below, because that is where I started to sort of think about women in horror, was from that list. And so this is her debut, where she demolishes the borders between psychological realism and science fiction, comedy and horror, fantasy and fabulism. Here are 8 startling stories that map the reality of women's lives and the violence visited upon their bodies. Earthly and otherworldly, antic and sexy, queer and caustic, comic and deadly serious, Her Body and Other Parties enlarges the possibilities of contemporary fiction. So I'm excited not only by the possibilities of the value of reading this for a horror project, but also just in general the sort of genre breaking, the subversion that this seems to involve. So I am very, very excited for this, and I'm hoping that the fact that I don't have the greatest track record with short story collections doesn't come into play here, because I like the vibes that I'm getting from this book. The other book that I picked up for women in horror is Helen Oyeyemi's White is for Witching. It says there's something strange about the Silver family's house in the closed-off town of Dover, England. Grand and cavernous with hidden passages and buried secrets, it's been home to 4 generations of Silver women. Anna, Jennifer, Lily, and now Miranda, who has lived in the house with her twin brother Elliot ever since their father converted it to a bed and breakfast. The Silver women have always had a strong connection, a pull over one another that reaches across time and space. And when Lily, Miranda's mother, passes away suddenly while on a trip abroad, that's a weird sentence, Miranda begins suffering strange ailments. An eating disorder starves her. She begins hearing voices. When she brings a friend home, Dover's hostility towards outsiders physically manifests within the 4 walls of the Silver house, and the lives of everyone inside are irrevocably changed. At once an unforgettable mystery and a meditation on race, nationality, and family legacies, White is for Witching is a boldly original, terrifying, and elegant novel by a prodigious talent. So this is giving me very strong Hill House vibes, which is again why I picked it up, because I want to see what something more contemporary written by a woman writing horror or playing with horror themes does. The last book I have here sort of breaks my rules, but I'm excited about it nonetheless, and that is Shirley Jackson, A Rather Haunted Life by Ruth Franklin. So this is a biography of Shirley Jackson. Historically, I have given zero shits about biographical readings of authors, but I find Jackson interesting as a human, just given the time period and her success within her own time, which I knew before picking up this biography, right? Jackson had a very successful publishing career in her lifetime where a lot of female authors that we now consider canonical or important literary figures were not considered so in their day. Like, they were either published under pseudonyms, male pseudonyms, or they weren't published in their lifetimes. Or if they were published, they had like very little impact in their day. It's only over the course of time that we recognize their importance. But Jackson was a successful figure in her lifetime, so I'm curious to learn about her, and I'm going to try and read her works first before I learn about her as a human, because again, I don't want to apply anything that I know about her as a human to her works. I don't want to do that biographical reading. Those are the books that I picked up in the last little bit of November. Let me know your thoughts on these books in the comments down below. Have you read any of them? Are you interested in hearing my thoughts on any of them? I would love to hear from you guys. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this and long-form projects possible. I know that videos haven't been super regular in the last little bit. October was absolutely bonkers, but I'm hoping to sort of get back into things. I have put a lot of things into place. I have planned a lot of things. I have scripted a lot of things. I have set aside time for filming, and I am really excited about the content that I have planned for December. So stick with me. I apologize for being absent a little bit these past 2 months, but sometimes you have to human. If you liked what you saw here today, give it a like. Consider subscribing. That would be cool. You want to support the channel? Patreon.com/EmilyCait is the way to do that. Links to that are in the description box down below or on the screen right now, maybe. That's all, really. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.